Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Cleveland Heights University Heights School Board work session. Mr. Gainer, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright. Mr. Bosch.
Here.
Mr. Hines.
Here.
Ms. Serene.
Here, and I'd like to let everyone know that Miss Wright did call me and say she's running late. She'll join as soon as she can.
Ms. Lewis.
Here.
So in the future, we need to be sure that we're not scheduling this meeting between 6 and 6:30. Beverly has a work conflict every single day. And I'm not sure how we got this scheduled at 6, and we don't need an explanation, but we are going to get going. We have a consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I motion that we consider the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion or comment?
I had nothing on it.
Scott, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bosch.
Yes.
Mr. Hines.
Yes.
Ms. Serene.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Thank you. So moving on to the core topic for tonight, it's we're going to review our reopening thoughts and plans. It was something we revisit on a regular basis. Ms. Kirby, would you lead us with that?
Yes, I will. I will just take a moment so that we can load it onto the screen so everyone can follow along. Just let me know once you guys are seeing it.
I can see it, Liz.
You can see it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. I need to make sure I can see it. Hold on. Okay, great. All right. So we are returning this evening, both myself and members of our cabinet, to update the board and the community on where we are with our reopening planning for the 2021 school year. As everyone knows, we have, like many districts, been engaged in plans and change of plans and timelines and extended timelines as things change and as information shifts. And so we want to share with you where we are right now with that work in Cleveland Heights University Heights School District. So as we move to our agenda, so tonight we're going to provide information on the current COVID-19 data. We'll discuss the most recent information we have on vaccines that applies to schools in our district. We'll have updates from our operational departments, our educational departments, and then we'll share recommendations and next steps at the end. So I first want to start with the most current county risk level that has been reported for Cuyahoga County. This information is as of January 7th, 2021. And as you can see here on this slide, Cuyahoga County remains at a level 3 red risk, according to the Ohio Department of Public Health Advisory System. We have met 2 of the 7 indicators in our county. And as you can see, most of the state also remains red at level 3. The next slide takes us to more specific information. And on this slide, I want to spend just a little bit of time here. We wanted to give you the context of how the other counties that surround us are trending as it specifically relates to cases per 100,000. That is one of the 7 indicators that is on the Ohio Department of Public Health, their advisory. One of the numbers that we closely track, and also the Cuyahoga County Board of Health closely tracks, is the cases per 100,000. I want to note that we did decrease, so we are now at 624.26 cases per 1,000. as opposed to 687.25 per 100,000. That's per 100,000, but we are still at a very high rate of incidents. We don't need to click on the tracker. We've showed that before, but you'll see that we still 687.25 per 100,000 is still a very high rate, as is all the rates in the other counties as well. And so you'll see in Geauga, there was an increase reported on the 7th. Lake also an increase reported on the 7th. Portage also an increase, and Summit had a decrease. So one thing that I want to make sure that I'm very clear about is the guidance that we use in our reopening plan. And when I say that, I'm talking about the guidance as it relates to which structures are appropriate to open, and what are the things that should be in place as we plan for our opening. So first, the national guidance that we rely on are the CDC recommendations, and you will see that referenced multiple times tonight, just to remind people of that. The second piece of guidance that we get is from the state. So the state puts out an Ohio Public Health Advisory System. ODE also has provided some guidelines for schools to consider in their reopening plans. The state just kind of puts out this statewide level 1, 2, 3, 4, colors yellow, orange, red, purple, to really note what COVID spread and COVID impact is looking like in different counties across the state. And then finally, we rely on the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations, which provide us the best local data around spread in particular. Guidance on all fronts continues to be updated as more information becomes available. So for example, tonight I will speak about the Cuyahoga County Board of Health stay-at-home advisory and how we are expecting an update to that. In addition to the fact that there's additional information that they are considering as they make their recommendations to schools. And so, the CDC updates their guidance, the Board of Health updates their guidance. And so as those updates happen, we pay attention to those to make sure that they are aligned to our plans. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, just as a reminder for everyone. They did extend their stay-at-home advisory until January 15th, 2021. So that is this Friday. Many of the districts and schools have been waiting with bated breath to find out if that advisory is going to be extended. I did speak with a representative from the Board of Health yesterday to find out what we could expect in terms of an extension. They indicated that they do anticipate there will be an extension of that advisory, but they are awaiting some additional data to come in that they will be crunching and processing as it relates to that advisory. They noted, for example, that Governor DeWine extended already his advisory to January 23rd, and that's an indicator that they are likely going to also extend that advisory. So we're in a challenging situation because, we really do rely on the Board of Health as relates to determining when we would recommend that we start to bring students back into the building, either in small groups or in a hybrid model or et cetera. That is not available yet, but after speaking with the representative and looking at our rates being still extremely high in the county, I certainly expect that will be extended. The Board of Health also talked during the January 8th press conference. You can go back, Kathan. They also talked a little bit about vaccine information. We'll talk about that at the next slide. But I want to pause on point 3 here because I have received some questions from parents and community members around the guidance that we use as it relates to how we recommend. And so I placed a link that is going to be really important for people to pay attention to. And you can link on that. We have followed the guidance of the Board of Health. If you just click on that link, please, Kathan. The reason that we have in our reopening plans aligned with the colors is because the Board of Health.
We're not seeing it.
Oh, okay.
Click on a link, we're not seeing that.
Sorry, it's still loading. I think it's almost up now. There we go.
Oh, okay.
I'm still not seeing it. Is anyone else?
No, I'm not seeing it either.
No.
Okay. Well, let me speak to it, and Kate, then we can go back at the end. Oh, there it is. Okay. And so this is the guidance document that was distributed to schools in September, and available to everyone actually in September. And on this, as you go through, you can scroll down through the document. You will note that the Board of Health makes specific recommendations aligned to the color code. And so because we are following the guidance of, our local health officials, which is the Board of Health, that is why our recommendations have remain aligned. Right, so you'll see level 3, you'll see level 4, and all of the things that they recommend for schools accordingly. Now, right before the break, the Board of Health, this is right around Thanksgiving actually, the Board of Health was watching the COVID rates and the COVID spread in Cuyahoga County. And at that time, they made a decision to advise schools to go to all remote instruction, even though the county level was 3, so that means the color was red. Now, again, we are following the guidance of the Board of Health, and that is the reason why we made the decision to move to all remote instruction because of the Board of Health's recommendation. So as we continue to plan for the reopening of the school year, we will follow the guidance of the Board of Health. The Board of Health guidance, again, in September indicated a color system. Once they saw those rates change, they indicated that a different model would be appropriate. And so I want to make sure that that is really, really, really clear. We're committed to the Board of Health because they are getting the local data, crunching the local numbers, and are in conversation with the schools regularly around what they're seeing. Okay. All right, let's move now to vaccines. So as it relates to vaccines, the governor did provide some updates on January 7th, indicating that on February 1st, they would start 1B vaccinations for school personnel. One thing to note, the governor indicated several times, by March 1st, superintendents have to agree to have their schools in an in-person model, and that can mean either full or hybrid by March 1st in order to be able to receive the vaccines for school personnel. We are awaiting some additional details on this process from the state and the county. We have shared some initial numbers of the amount of school personnel that this would apply to. The ESC is also collecting this information from all districts just to make sure that they can communicate back to the state what the needed vaccines are. So they are coordinating this work across the districts in Northeast Ohio. So for context, we have in the state of Ohio about 334,000 school staff, and that is of the 2.2 million numbers of people that are in Phase B. I want to note that school staff includes substitutes, contractors, and student teachers. And I also want to note that according to the Board of Health and the state, these vaccines are expected to be effective in protecting against the new strain of COVID-19 that has been detected, that has been, in much conversation. All right. So those are my opening comments. I'm going to now turn this over to the operations team. Actually, I'm going to speak to the first slide, and then I'll turn it over to George Petcat. So a couple considerations as relates to operations. If you go to the consideration slide, please, Catherine. Are you able to advance it? Okay, great. So a couple things. We're going to talk a bit about the HVAC systems and air quality because we do have those questions. We want to make sure we address those. But just as the standard course of business, and I said this at our last board meeting, we have a very qualified operations team that regularly maintains our HVAC systems. And we also have ensured that we have aligned our work to the CDC recommendations. So this is before the HEPI report. This is before looking into air purifiers, things we're going to talk about later. Just standard operating procedures in our district. We have had those in place, George and his team. But we wanted to take additional steps to increase safety. So we know we're already aligned to the CDC's recommendations. We know that we have all of the protocols and the safety protocols for students to come back safely today, if we were able to do that. But we really want and have been looking and taking additional steps. Another thing to note, and everyone knows this, we've had students and staff in small groups from the beginning of the year. Not only do we have our students in our low incidence classes in, but we also had students in that were doing career and technical education, for example. We have not had any COVID cases traced back to the classrooms. So, we think that this helps us in terms of assessing the impact of the safety measures that we have had in place as we work with these students. And they are also help inform our planning as well. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to George Petcat, who's going to take us through a discussion of our HVAC systems.
Thank you, Ms. Kirby. Good evening, board members. I'm going to run through a bunch of slides here, and I'm not going to go word for word, so if you have any questions, please stop me. The CDC recommendations for our HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. So our business services department has taken great care to align our systems with the CDC recommendations. So this, Caitlin clicks on this action steps that we've taken. What I did was take those steps that were, again, on the CDC website, downloaded them to this spreadsheet once it opens up here. And then I got with the trades department and wanted to confirm that I wasn't just putting stuff up there without getting their input. So running through these are things that the CDC recommends on the left and what we did on the right. So one of the first things that they did recommend was increasing the outdoor air. We did that. We increased it from 10%. It's actually up to 30%. It was to 20, but I just had them increase it to 30 because that was updated by the CDC to increase it to 30% if we could, and we can. When the weather conditions allow increased fresh air, we're doing that because the temperatures do allow us to do that. We have, if fans are present, we allow the staff to use that. That's at the discretion of the individual schools. The decreasing occupancy, we've already done that when ventilation has not been present. So based on the HEPI report, we have already placed air purifiers in specific locations throughout, I think it was 4 locations. And those same air purifiers are the ones that we're considering purchasing a lot more of. Ensure ventilation systems operate properly, provide acceptable indoor air quality for current occupancy level for each space. So we have opened outdoor air dampers again, and we are running the units 24/7. Why is that important? The CDC recommends bringing in and recirculating that air throughout the day. Typically, we shut the units down at night to conserve energy, and we have been running like this since late summer. We have overridden those controls, so we're continuously bringing in outside air and fresh air. Increase outside occupied spaces, airflow into those spaces. We have done that in the high school and middle schools because those systems are newer. We're capable of actually making sure that those systems run at 100% continuously. And for the other schools, the elementary schools, we're going to be purchasing air purifiers to include in the classroom spaces to assist with that operation. Next one was open outdoor air dampers beyond minimum settings. Again, we're running our units at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Filtration, we have done that. It's completed. The filters were arriving last week, and the MERV filters have been and are being installed in all the units as expected. Our systems, it says inspect the housings, and that's done monthly by our HVAC team. And our preventive maintenance. So that's something we've always been doing. We're just going to continue to do it. Ensure bathroom exhaust fans are running 24 hours a day. We've also had those checked, and they've been turned on and running 24 hours a day. to increase the air flow throughout the school. Inspect and maintain local exhaust ventilation. That even includes the kitchens and all those systems. Wherever we have kitchens at, those kitchen hoods have been turned on and are continuing to run. Any system that we have that would have been turned off for whatever reason, we have overridden it and we are running it to make sure that it's running 24 hours a day. We have consider using ultraviolet germicidal, the UVG, and I am still investigating that. I've been in communication with HEPE, with the Board of Health, and have some feedback from them, and also with another engineering firm just investigating options. Also, Ohio School Council is investigating that for most of the districts in Northeast Ohio. We have already turned off any demand control. That's at the high school and the middle schools. Again, that's overriding the system and making sure that's running 24 hours a day.
Hey, George, can I ask a quick question here?
Sure.
Regarding the ultraviolet germicidal radiation, it's the item above that you're just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says consider using. So it doesn't sound like they're mandating it. But
Jim, most of the stuff that we've been going through is recommendations.
Okay.
And in fact, I just received in a discussion with the director from the County Board of Health today, and they have reiterated that wearing masks, social distancing, are the mainstays of what we need to do to be safe. These CDC are, again, at the top, it says recommendations. Nothing's been mandatory. Everything that we're doing is based on their recommendations and in what our systems are capable of doing. So for example, our elementary schools, those systems are not like the middle school and the high school. So a lot of these things we can't accomplish with those systems because they're incapable of doing it. But for your question about that specific, there's a lot of information on that I think even Ohio School Council, with all the business managers, a lot of people have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns. And it's not just about pricing, which is expensive. It's about the safety and the operation of that equipment. And then how do you actually implement that through a larger district in every air handler and every ventilator? It gets very pricey. But I will follow up. We're continuing to investigate it.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
The next one was just a list of the filters and what we did at each building.
George,
Yes.
George, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Sure.
I just see Beverly just clicked in, and I am thankful that she got on this call and she has access to this presentation. But I want to apologize for the board for making this meeting at 6 o'clock, which is sort of on the outside of her availability. We will not do this again. So Beverly, you have my apology that we will not schedule a meeting like this that you can't attend when we start.
Thank you.
If you look at the filters, we listed the filters for so you can see what the MERV rating, because everybody talks about that MERV rating should be 13 if we can get there. And you'll notice that some of the schools list, like Canterbury, a MERV 11. That's the highest rated filter that we can get in that unit. But what I did want to explain to you, because you'll see at Delisle, at our footprint buildings, Boulevard, Delisle, Fairfax, that you'll see a MERV rating 8 for the pre-filter and 13 for the main filter. These systems that we have on a rooftop have a pre-filter. So we have a MERV rated 8 filter, and then right after that, we have a MERV 13 filter. So we're exceeding our MERV rating in those particular units. So I didn't want anybody to think that we only have an 8 at those buildings. It's actually, those are a pre-filter in front of the main filter. And it says consider portable high efficiency air particulate HEPA filters, and we are. I do have pricing back, and I am going to be ordering air purifiers for every classroom in the district. So those will be in place before students return. Obtain consultation from experienced heating, ventilation, HVAC, and that was the HEPE report. And I want to also add that I am in discussions with a firm out of Mentor that also conducts specific inspections and calculations off of for CFM and air exchanges in a classroom, and that'll come up in a slide here a little bit later too. So the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations for the HVAC system, again, was to ensure that the systems are operating as designed. And it may not be possible to meet the current ASHRAE 62.1 standards, but the system should be optimized. And what our older systems are maintained and operating as they were designed. We constantly, they're inspected monthly, where the filters are changed and the motors are checked and belts checked if they have belts on them. So this is something that we have been doing and we will continue to do throughout this. Increase the amount of outside air makeup. We're doing that. It's been increased here to 30%. The level of filtration, we just talked about that. And the majority of our buildings are up to that MERV 13, and the high school actually has HEPA filters throughout some systems there. Again, when it talks about the increase the frequency of the filters being changed, that's going to have to happen because of the thickness of the filter. It's going to catch more materials from dust and they'll clog up quicker. So we may have only been changing a filter every 3 months. We're more than likely going to be changing these filters every month. You can go to the next slide, Caitlin. So this is the air exchanges per hour is a widely accepted changing the air volume 6 times. And we do and are capable of showing that through the high school and the middle schools. Because of the newer equipment, we have our control systems are capable of running reports to show that we are providing more than 6 air changes per hour in those classrooms. Unfortunately, the older systems in our elementary schools are not capable of doing that. So this company that I just started talks with to get an idea of what type of inspections can they conduct for us to maybe not do go to every single classroom in our elementary schools, but do sampling in each building and come up with a report to see where we stand with those air changes so we can report to you and to the rest of the community that we're doing everything we possibly can.
Excuse me, George.
Yes.
I just want to clarify that what you said is not that the buildings are not capable of doing the air exchanges, but that we don't have the monitoring equipment to measure the air exchanges per hour, correct?
Correct.
Do we have any sense of how many air exchanges are happening in those buildings? Or will this company give us those numbers?
This company can take those measurements and tell us that that's what they do for a living. Actually, they were recommended, 2 companies were recommended by HEPE because HEPE said they couldn't do it as an extensive report as this company can. So I just, again, started discussions with them. I'm expecting to get some feedback tomorrow, and we can move on from there.
And then we'll have a sense of what is currently happening with our systems.
Right.
Terrific. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Examine the performance of the air exhaust from restrooms. That's constantly done, and it's going to continue. Again, that's preventive maintenance, and it's done monthly. So these recommendations have been completed with the exception of number 4, which I'm in the process of doing, of course. It's only possible at the newly renovated Monticello Middle School, Rocks, and the high school, and that's because of the equipment. So again, as I mentioned, I'm currently in a consulting with a company on how to perform air exchanges per hour measurements, which we would utilize at the elementary schools. In addition, the air purifiers will be purchased for all the classrooms, and the air purifiers that we will be buying are capable of taking that air and purifying it every 30 minutes in a classroom up to 800 square feet. There are additional steps that we're taking. So the HEPE study, which has been one of the firms that we brought into the district to help us with investigating our systems, making sure that what we're doing in general, again, the study was not intended to be a in-depth telling us what the CFM of every unit was. I wanted an outside source to come in, so it wasn't just the business department saying, hey, everything's okay. And that's what they conducted that study of the 12 district buildings. The main goal of the study was to review the functionality of the HVAC equipment through visual inspections. Focus was to provide a preliminary assessment of the equipment in each building. Again, it was functionality, overall condition, filtration, and cleanliness. They reviewed the status of the outdoor air ventilation and identified any serious conditions, which they noted there weren't any serious conditions. We did have some equipment that was in need of repair, but that was already noted through our work order system. So the spaces within each building were reviewed for the presence of supply and outdoor air. The HEPE study was an added step by the district after, so we can align with the CDC guidance. So some of the questions that came from the study that we needed to answer was, why was Wiley not included in the study? So when the discussions first began with the HEPE engineering firm, the buildings that the students and staff were returning to as part of the original return to the school plan were identified for their inspection services. This I take full responsibility for. As I told the superintendent when I was going through this, Wiley was not on my radar. So I did contact them, and that is scheduled for this Thursday. They're going to come in and evaluate the part of Wiley that's being occupied by Right at School. So
can I just jump in? I want to jump in
Sure.
here, though, George. And I think the last point is important. And I said this at the last board meeting, too. And I said it at the beginning. We already have a system to make sure that our HVAC systems are safe. That the team has already been engaged in that protocol. So of them being maintained and operated. Just want an additional eye on it. And that's number one. Number two, Right at School has to get licensed by the state. And the state comes in and they also do an assessment of the state before Right at School is able to offer that child care to our families. So that happened before one child entered the building. The state had to sign off and certify. And so, we are going to add Wiley just as an extra step. But again, I don't want anyone to have the impression that we had children going into a space that wasn't safe. In fact, the state would not have allowed that to happen. And also we had the CDC guidelines and all the safety protocols in place, in addition to our own system of maintenance of the facilities and the HVAC systems.
Yes, and Liz, you're exactly right. Those systems have been maintained the same and continue to be. Even though it was a vacant building, we still maintain systems. And it's on a preventive maintenance schedule, and they're inspected. Every day, an HVAC technician goes into that school. So, yes, it is being taken care of like the rest of our buildings. How do our results compare to other districts? So I did ask HEPE, in comparison with our districts, and this is a quote from them, CHUH survey results were more positive than similar districts reviewed. The HVAC equipment and HVAC control systems in most buildings were more sophisticated than other districts because of the systems were newer. Also, it was apparent the HVAC systems under CHUH are under maintenance and inspection plans. Systems were operational and clean. Filters were replaced recently on all equipment, etc. The district takes pride in the condition and operation of the HVAC equipment. So they were impressed with not just our equipment but also our employees. They actually let me know personally that the HVAC technicians that took them around were very proud of showing them just how well they maintain our equipment. So we have the report states that ASHRAE recommendations reviewed in this report are based on a position document on infectious aerosols dated April 14th, 2020. Why did HEPE did not refer to more recent ASHRAE equipment task force document from October 7th? The ASHRAE position document is a long-standing document that ASHRAE updates based on the latest science and republishes every 3 years. In general, the ASHRAE ETF document provides some additional application detail of the ASHRAE position document options, but do not introduce new understandings on how to mitigate the spread of airborne infectious aerosols. That was a reply from HEPE that I asked for. The report discusses increasing the cubic feet per minute where possible, but does not indicate that any measurement of current CFM were performed. If this information available, or will it be made available? This would let us know how many people can be in a room to meet ASHRAE CFM person standards. So the temperature air balance reports were not part of what HEPE engineering scope of the project was. HEPE engineers did note increasing the outside air cubic feet per minute would be based on the values indicated in the original design documents. And CHUH would have to look at the initial contract documents, increase it based on the original design intent, although the steps that have taken a line to CDC recommendations, we will continue to follow up on this question. So in general, let's just take a classroom. The high school was designed to, and I'm just throwing numbers out there, to provide 900 cubic feet per minute. That's the design. Now, these increasing that, can you increase that to bring in more air? That's if the equipment can do it, right? So our high school and middle schools, we are capable of doing that, but that's what they're talking about, is going back to the original design documents. And that's what I'm providing this firm with for the elementary schools. They're going to look at all our elementary school design documents to see if they can pull that information up for what's the original classroom intent was. And then that could be based on how much air are we bringing in, based on the amount of people that we can put in that classroom. So standard building protocols.
Actually,
Paul,
yeah,
Paul
Dr. Lombardo's going to move on this. We're
I'll
going to
get
give you a
glass of
break,
water,
George. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. As we look at our standard building protocols, as students and staff come in the building, we will have cleaning protocols. During the day, we'll be disinfecting high-touch surfaces, concentrating on the handles, rails. Bathrooms will be cleaned and disinfected every couple hours. After students leave, you don't have to click on that building standards, but as always, we'll be following the building standards as it comes to cleaning areas. Social distancing in classrooms have been accomplished. We have gone through the buildings, every classroom. There's been 6-foot measuring sticks to make sure that desks are 6 foot apart. We are placing tiger paw prints underneath those desks so that if things get moved by teachers, students, or during cleaning, that we'll know where those desks need to be maintained for that 6-foot distance. As far as building specific protocols, we have continuing to update our health and safety document. This is on our website and has been sent to the community and staff, which outlines all our safety guidelines, washing hands 6 foot apart, what to do if there is a positive COVID-19, and so on. Draft documents of each specific building are being developed, and those will be made available on our website. So this is a list of all the health and safety protocols that we have been working through since we've been working with the reopening. Mask wearing is mandatory. We have already approved that policy in August. It's 8450.01. Safety protocols are displayed throughout the building. We will still have temperature checks for all staff and students upon arrival. We have installed desk barriers, partitions for all students and staff desks, so those have already been completed. There's Purell hand sanitizer dispensers in each classroom. We have them in all office areas, throughout the hallways, in large areas such as cafeterias and gyms. One-way decal directions are being placed on the floor. We do have wipe buckets, which is a bucket filled with disinfectant with about 300 wipes. That'll be in every single classroom and office areas, and those will be able to be refilled when needed. Disinfectant spray bottles are in each class as well. Classroom desks, as we talked about, are 6 feet apart. And we do have door hangers where anyone who's working in that room, when they leave, they can either turn it to say cleaning needed, or if it has been cleaned and no one has entered that room, the door handle will remain clean, and that means that the cleaner knows that no one's been occupied in that room for that day. There has been some new quarantine guidelines. You don't have to click on that, Kathan, but if you're interested, there was a study done to look at when students were in a classroom 6 feet apart, to 3 feet apart, wearing a mask, what was the spread of COVID. So based on that study, and you can go through that study, these new quarantine guidelines have just come out. Those that are more than 6 feet apart and in close contact do not have to quarantine. That has always been the case. If you're further than 6 feet apart, someone tests positive for COVID, you're within the vicinity, but more than 6 feet, you would not have to quarantine. Those that are less than 6 feet apart but exposed to outside of the classroom, bus, or not wearing facial coverings will still have to follow all quarantine guidelines and protocols. But here's where it becomes a little different than what we've heard before. Those that are between 3 and 6 feet apart do not have to quarantine from attending instruction in person if the exposure was in the classroom or on a bus, and all parties involved in the exposure were wearing facial coverings. So this just goes to show that as long as we're in a controlled classroom, there are face masks between 3 and 6 feet. Kids do not have to now quarantine for that 14 days and they can come back to in-person instruction. These students would still have to quarantine from extracurricular activities as advised and still quarantine from activities in the community. So although they can come back to in-school instruction in that controlled area, which would be the classroom or on the bus, they would still have to quarantine from extracurricular activities. So if you're on a bus, what the measurements suggest is if we do have one student in each seat and they are wearing their mask, that is about 3 feet apart. So if someone does test positive for COVID on a bus and everyone is wearing their mask, they would still be able to attend and come back on the bus the next day. Depending on our buses, if you do have 2 in a seat, then you would have to quarantine. Again, it's 1 person in a seat wearing their mask. They could still come back to school or on the bus with the new guidance. So there are some questions that came up, and I did touch upon these. Will partitions be at all occupied student desks in each classroom? Yes, it has been, and they are currently secured to all student desks and teacher desks. Will all students be eating in the cafeteria, or will they be separated into smaller groups into classrooms or other available rooms in the school? So lunch and breakfast procedures are determined by each individual school with safety and social distancing at the forefront. Documents containing each school's daily procedures will be on CHUH, our website. But there most likely will be a grab and go for the breakfast, and we are looking to do what we can for our larger spaces in the cafeteria to at least allow students to social distance and have lunch in the cafeteria. But again, that will be based on each school. Who is providing masks and ensuring they are clean? Parents and guardians are responsible for sending their children to school with clean, well-fitting masks. We do have disposable masks that are available in case a student forgets or misplaces their mask. So we will have them available. But the responsibility is for parents and guardians to make sure students do come to school with clean, well-fitting masks. Thank you.
And next, we're going to go to the instructional update, and we will start with our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, Mrs. Felicia Gould.
Good evening, everyone. The draft in-person schedules can be found on our reopening page on our website. I will go over some of the schedules here. I'll start with the preschool schedule. And here we have our preschool schedule hybrid model that shows our split schedule, as we call it, with a group A and a group B. This schedule shows students attending school 4 days a week. in a AM and a PM type setting, with Wednesday being used for teacher planning and meetings. As we move to our kindergarten hybrid schedules, we are looking at the same type of schedule, a half-day model with students attending in the AM and PM, but students in Group A, all the students in Group A will include all of our students who are in need of transportation to school. Students coming into the schools here will get their breakfast and go to their classrooms. All students at the beginning of the day will have what we call community learning time, where they all log in, whether they are in Group A or Group B. Staff will have the opportunity to meet and greet the students, take attendance, and give instructions for the day. Students then from 9 to 11:30 in Group A will then have in-person instruction, and at the 11:30 hour, they will then grab their lunches, leave the building, go home, and then sign back in to do their asynchronous work, as well as meet with their special assignment teachers. Students in Group B, while this is occurring, are at home completing their special assignments and doing their Google assignments. Lunch is then gathered once they come into the building, and then they have their in-person instruction in the afternoon. Our next model we'll take a look at is the kindergarten split model, where we have the Monday and Tuesday, Thursday, Friday type of setting. Students in this model follow pretty much what we will see in many of our hybrid models, where we have a group that comes on Monday and Tuesday and a group that comes on Thursday and Friday. So this model then looks at a 2-day model for our students. Students are again getting their breakfast, headed to the classroom, and then have in-person learning. They'll have lunch at school, in-person learning in the afternoon, and then dismissal. With any of our models, Group A and Group B, we are looking at alphabets by the last name. With looking at the alphabets by the last name, in Group A, we are looking at students A through K, and then Group B, we're looking at students L through Z. This is the hybrid model for Group A and Group B for grades 1 through 5. Again, what you have here is students all signing in at 9 o'clock. Everyone is signing in at 9 o'clock, meeting with the teacher, going over what they need to do for the day. Students in Group A are here, again, for 2 days a week with in-person learning from the 9 o'clock hour to the 11:30 hour, grabbing their, eating lunch at school, and then having their asynchronous in the afternoon with a remote and afternoon specials on Wednesday. The same thing occurs on Thursday and Friday for students in Group B. Our middle school model is very similar to the models that we're seeing for grades 1 through 5, as well as any of our hybrid models. Although the middle school is calling their Group A and Group B's the gold group and the black group. Again, students meeting back to back on Monday and Tuesday, alphabet by last names A through L, with Wednesday being a virtual asynchronous day, and Thursday and Friday for Group B. And the middle school schedule currently follows their same schedule so that it will be an easy transition to the hybrid model. For the high school schedule, which also follows a black and gold selection. There is a little difference here, and I will point out what the difference is. The high school will follow their same 8-period day schedule. However, the students in Group A and B do not come for 2 days back to back. They are, Group A comes on Monday and Group B comes on Tuesdays. The teachers selected this particular model because they wanted to do instruction and prepare students for the times when they would be at home. So they would do the same instruction on Monday, the same instruction on Tuesday for both groups, giving them the instructions that they would need on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, with Wednesday being a day where both the Black and Gold group would all be meeting virtually with the staff. And the options model follows the same pattern as the hybrid models, with a Group A and a Group B, still following the same schedule that they've had with an AM session and a PM session, with the alphabets listed there, and a black and gold day, and all students working remotely on Wednesday. Next, we'll share our survey results from our interest survey that was done on December 22nd with all of our families.
So I will go ahead and take over from here, and I will ask Mrs. Gould to please present. And I will wait until I see it on the screen. Thank you, Mrs. Gould. So starting with the preschool interest survey. So we, as Mrs. Gould mentioned, we sent these surveys out right before winter break. And for the preschool interest survey, we received 70 responses. So you can see the breakdown by school here, about 86% from Garrity Preschool and about 14% from the Noble Preschool. And in terms of the responses, about 66% of parents indicated that they would like their preschoolers to participate in the in-person classes based on their current class assignment. And 34% have indicated that they would like to continue participating virtually. And it's important to note that if and when the students return in person, classes will be capped at 9 students per the Ohio Department of Education guidance from this past June. So moving on to kindergarten, these surveys are actually still open right now for responses. So at last check today, we received 250 responses, and you can see the breakdown by school here. And of those 250 respondents, about 32% have said that they would like to keep their kindergartner fully remote for next semester. And as you'll see here, about 41% said no, that they would not like to keep their kindergartner fully remote. And the rest, at about 27%, are not sure at this time. So for the K through 12 surveys, if the respondent answered that they wanted to keep their child in a remote status, we didn't have them answer any additional questions. So you'll see that the response number is a little bit lower with the follow-up questions. So of the parents who responded that they would like to see their child return or they weren't sure, that was 169 of this group. We presented the half-day model and the hybrid model to them, as Mrs. Gould explained. And at last check, 49% preferred the half-day model, and about 40% prefer the hybrid model, and 11% don't have a preference either way. And then looking at grades 1 through 5, last check we had 977 responses, and you can see the breakdown of responses by school here. And we also broke this one down by grade level, so you can see how it's broken down through grades 1 through 5. So just like with the kindergarten survey, we asked, do you plan to keep your elementary student fully remote for next semester? And the parents responded 36% would like to keep their child fully remote. 34%, excuse me, do not wish to keep their children fully remote for next semester, and 30% are unsure at this time. And of the respondents who indicated that they either want to have their children return or they aren't sure, 60% are interested in the hybrid model that we showed them in the survey, and 34% maybe would be interested in that for their child, and the remainder there, I guess that's about 6%, are not interested in the hybrid model. So moving on to the middle school interest survey, 562 responses at last check, and you can see the breakdown by school here, about 55% Brock's Mid, 45% Monticello. So we asked them, just like we asked with the others, do you plan to keep your student fully remote during semester 2? And at the middle school level, 37% have said yes, they wish to keep their child fully remote. A third do not, 33%, and 30% are not sure. And we asked them if they are interested in their student attending school in a hybrid model. 61% have said yes, they are interested in the hybrid model that we presented to them in the survey. About 34% have said maybe, and the rest are not interested in the hybrid model. About 5% there. And finally, the high school and options interest survey. You can see it broken down by school here out of the 706 responses we've received so far. And we asked them, do you plan to keep your student fully remote next semester? And about 45% have said yes, they want to keep their high schooler or option student home. And about 29% do not wish to keep their student fully remote, and the rest at 26% are not sure. And again, pretty similar numbers here. We asked the parents who indicated that they either wish to have their child in school or they're not sure. Are you interested in the hybrid model? And about 60% said yes, and 34% said maybe. And the last little bit there, about 6% said no. And that is all for the interest surveys. I'll send it back over to Mrs. Gould.
As far as our concurrent instruction, which means that teachers will deliver the instruction to students learning remotely and those who are learning in a school simultaneously. We know that based on the survey that we have students who will return in person, as well as we will have students that will remain remote. So what will that type of instruction look like so that students can access the classroom? Factors that we need to consider are staffing, and students attending school in person and remote. So currently we are meeting with staff, or I'm meeting with staff. The meetings have been scheduled to really work with staff on what that in-person experience will look like, as well as the online engagement for a student who is remote.
All right, good evening. As we are thinking about the Ohio Online piece, we know that the Ohio Online families continue to have this as an option for semester 2. And so we did send out a survey through Infinite Campus Messenger that went out last Friday, asking the Ohio Online families to submit their response by this coming Thursday if they want to remain in the program. And that way we can start enrolling students, whether it's through the Lincoln Learning Platform, or we can schedule students through the Edgenuity classes that we have licenses for. And if families are looking to move into a full online program because they are in that percentage of the survey respondents that said that they are not planning to come back to in-person or hybrid learning, that they can reach out to their school counselor or their building administrator for us to then move them into a space that would allow them to have access to the Ohio Online or Edgenuity courseware. So that is something that we'd love for families to be able to do in advance of the January 19th start date of semester 2, if they fall into that category.
And we still have hotspots that are still available through our grant from Broadband Ohio. So if you'd like to reserve one for your family, please contact our IT department. The number is there, and then there's a request form. So there were some instructional FAQs, and we'll go over those here. Will my child be able to keep his or her teacher if they stay remote? Just based on the information in regarding concurrent teaching for those students who are remaining remote and being in person, we cannot guarantee that the child will keep the teacher that they currently have in the due to remote learning and our staffing needs. If hybrid becomes an option, is there any flexibility in which days my child attends? Yes, this is going to be handled on a case-by-case basis by the building principal to work with families who siblings may have different last names so that they are in the same group A or group B, depending on the family's needs. Will before and after care services be provided? The district is currently working to provide these services and will keep families informed. Nancy Pepler is very much involved in the scheduling piece and is helping to work with staff to figure out the before and after care services. And we are also sharing the schedules with those before and after care agencies. So recommended return structure for school is that all staff will return to the schools in a hybrid model. Then we would be looking at a phase in of students, looking at students in grades pre-K and K, 6 and 9, and looking at this phase in just due to the fact that we have students who have never been in our schools and providing them with that opportunity to be in the school and go through the protocols with staff. Students in grades 1 through 5, then 7 and 10 return, and students in grades 8, 11, and 12 return. However, we also will have in-person testing. In-person testing will take place as early as January 26th because it is a state test and must occur in person. That's the PSAT test that will take place at the high school. All of our recommendations and anything in regards to a return structure are vetted and based on information that we get from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health.
So I'm just going to share our overall recommendations as we conclude our presentation. As I stated at the start of our presentation, we have been waiting on updated guidance from the Board of Health, and we anticipate that they will be extending that guidance. And so given that fact, we are recommending that we remain in our remote model until at least February 1st while we wait on that guidance, and plan to offer instruction in a hybrid model on or before March 1st for all of our students, again, pending the guidance from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. Based on the work that Mrs. Gould has been doing with the kindergarten teachers and the survey results, we are also recommending that when we start to implement that hybrid model, that we implement a half-day schedule for our kindergarten students, similar to what we have in place for the pre-K students. I can tell you I've been looking at some national data around the performance of those kindergartners who missed that last quarter of school. And they are the group that has nationally, when we look at the national data, they are the group that has had the heaviest impact in terms of literacy instruction. So really has been challenging in our kindergartners across the country and missing that second half of the school year when COVID-19 began. And so our next steps are going to be to continue planning to prepare for any changes. And again, I want to thank our reopening committees, all of the teachers, staff, administrators, central office personnel, board members who are on those committee meetings. I want to thank the PTA Leadership Council for providing questions and giving us their feedback on our reopening plans. We'll continue that engagement. And we will continue to monitor. We have some follow-up also that we're doing as we indicated. And then we'll also continue to monitor and communicate out information about COVID-19 in addition to the information around vaccines and what that vaccine rollout is. We have shared with the staff information where they can indicate if they plan on taking the vaccine. And also we've shared information with the staff about registering with the county for the vaccine. They have a pre-registration page up right now. And that concludes our presentation. We can now open it up for questions and discussion.
Does anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I have some questions about face covering for our like kindergartners, first and second graders. Are they required face covering when they're in the buildings?
Yes, they are required to wear face coverings unless they have an exemption based on what the policy states. It could be a medical condition or so forth. But yes, it is mandatory for them as well.
You know, about the face covering, I mean, if you're in a kindergarten class and you have a certain number of kids in your classroom, you're going to have a bunch of kids that are going to start pulling down their masks, and we're going to be, trying to get those masks back on those kids. I mean, is this a problem is this a real problem that other school districts have had to deal with that are back already? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is there any kind of data or statistics out there or concerns or things that we can learn from other districts that are back where kids just have a hard time keeping their masks on?
I haven't heard any kind of specific strategies or data as it relates to that. I can tell you that when we had our students that have special needs back, we've had younger kids back. Those students have been in masks. Sometimes they have not been, and the teachers will just remind the kids to have those masks up as well. And so, with the younger kids, you have to continue to remind them. But we haven't, and I haven't heard anything from the Board of Health saying that it's the younger kids that are causing COVID spread in those schools that have opened. In fact, I can tell you, I have not heard of a lot of the COVID spread happening in classrooms. Even for those districts that have been back 5 days a week, they have not been driving, the COVID infiltration in those counties too, as well. But it is something that we know we're going to have to be vigilant about. We know when the kids come back, we're going to have to spend some time. This recommendation came out of the advisory committee, spend some time really teaching students the culture of being back in schools, under COVID-19 in particular, and all those safety and mask protocols as well.
This is just anecdotal, of course, but certainly amongst the younger children who I've crossed paths with, I'm sort of surprised at how there is a pretty decent culture of wearing your mask now. And this is, mostly outside, walking in the street and in parks and things. I'm pleasantly surprised at the prevalence of masks, even amongst little kids. So, you spend enough months doing this, it does enter the culture, which should make things easier, I hope.
Liz, do we have any data on how many of our staff members are planning on getting the vaccine?
I do not have that data yet. I expect I'll have that by Friday. I think there was a deadline of, I think it's today, for the staff to report that to the ESC, and I haven't reached back out to them to get those numbers yet.
Okay.
But I'll have those.
So I have a couple of issues, just topics. It seems to me that in terms of timeline stuff, I know that the state is very eager to have us have March 1st as a target on the calendar, and I think that that's a really good target. You know, but to me, one of the interesting opportunities that comes with the vaccine is that we know that for one of them, I get them mixed up, but depending upon which one we get, we know when the second shot is going to arrive, is scheduled to arrive. And then we know once the second shot is administered, how many days until it's really up to full speed in terms of its efficacy in the body. And so it seems to me that we would be wise to begin to engineer our reopening around that calendar, that once a large proportion of our staff gets the first shot, that's when we can start sort of ticking down days on a calendar as to when we can reopen. And that could provide a comfortable cushion also of this is when we really can ramp up. And in the interim, we can do things like, you know, let's say that it's beyond the March 1st goal from the state of Ohio. We can do things like open houses to familiarize kids with the buildings, and they can walk their schedule and things like that, so that we're really getting kids back into the mindset, if you will, of being face to face. We're certainly doing our due diligence. We're living up to our end of the bargain per se, but we're also being as conscientious and responsible as possible with the science of the COVID and the vaccine. So I think that that's worth really kind of just muscling through a little bit, thinking about the efficacy of the vaccine. I also, I do want to point out that something that I've come across in my teaching across county lines. So I live in Cuyahoga County, obviously. I teach in Geauga. As a Geauga teacher, I was directed to sign up for the Cuyahoga vaccinations. I will tell you, a very good friend of mine who teaches with me in Geauga County but lives in Lake County told her that she is to sign up in Geauga County, that it is the county where one teaches, not where one lives. So we need some statewide, really, direction on that, because that could really slow things down, and that's classic bureaucratic screw up. So I think that we need just clarity on that. I will also point out that I really believe that, you know, and I'm disappointed, to be honest with you, to see that this whole concurrent learning is still the bedrock of what we have in the plan for, you know, for instruction. You know, I've made it clear from day one, I will not support a return to school program that relies on concurrent learning. We've changed it from synchronous learning to concurrent learning, and it is fraught with problems, and it is not worth it is not worth our pinning our hopes on that false dream. It is not a model that we can rely on. And it is disappointing to me that having raised that in these public forums for so long, that I would have hoped that we would have had alternatives voiced, because it's just a bad plan. So I'm saying that out loud again, and I'm going to reiterate the fact that I will not support a return to learning program that relies on concurrent learning or asynchronous. I've done it. I'm pretty sure I'm the one person on this call that has done it for weeks. And I'm looking y'all in the eye again, and I'm saying it doesn't work. So we need to change that. We need another model, a backup model. We need to get that done. It needs to be in the mix. Also, I would point out that separately, that the numbers for the pre-K surveys, I was originally very concerned about the 85 to 14% return rate, but doing a little bit of research, it's not as off as it seems, because about 85% of our pre-K students are actually at Garrity. We've got 7 classes at Garrity and 2 at Noble. So that's not as skewed as it might be. It's actually right on line. That's everything from me.
So about
Let me respond. Can I respond to a couple of things just
Sure.
I don't want it to get lost in the conversation. So the first, Dan, is to the March 1st and the notion of using the vaccines and the second, all of that. So the reason why the Board of Health guidance is something that's really important in our recommendation to the board is because they really have all the information that guide boards of education across the county as it relates to when are the conditions safe to reopen. We may not have everyone vaccinated or starting the vaccine before the Board of Health indicates you can start to implement some models. And I just want that to be clear as the board discusses. So that's number one. Number two, I don't want to sign off on a document that says that, yes, we will start March 1st. And then therefore that means that all of our staff, our teachers, our administrators, everyone gets the vaccine, and then go and say, oh no, we really just did open houses, right? Now that doesn't mean that there are other models of instruction to consider as it relates to hybrid, but I want us to be very careful about that. I did get a call from the state today. They wanted to know where we are with our decision. I indicated to the state, we'd be in discussion today around that. That's number one. Number two, as it relates to concurrent instruction, one of the reasons that we did do, and we talked about this last night in the meeting just a little bit, so I'll talk a little bit more. One reason that we did the survey for families is because we wanted to get a sense of what are some of the other type of instructional models that we can have in place, because we know it's hard, just for everyone's understanding, it can be concurrent or simultaneous. We know that, having a elementary school student dial into a class is not going to be the optimal structure for them for learning. It's like we can't, an 8-year-old watching while the teacher teaches, that's just too difficult. And so, but we also know, and we also have what we're also trying to plan around is we know that families really value the consistency of their teacher. And so, we've had, information. I can tell you, I've talked to, district superintendents, Bob and Felicia have talked to teachers, curriculum who have done, the simultaneous / concurrent teaching as well. In some places it works well. In some places it doesn't work well. People really do struggle with the elementary school students, which is why those are the models we're looking at. We do believe that given the interest of families so far, that at least on the elementary school side, and this is why we share it with parents, we can't guarantee as we transition to hybrid that students will keep their teachers. On the elementary school side, we do think we'll be able to look at a model where we can have a teacher that is dedicated to those students that are that have decided to remain remote, and then teacher or teachers who are working with the students who are hybrid. We certainly try to keep the kids with their teacher as much as we possibly can, but there could be some changes. At the end of the day, for all of our models, we want to make sure that we have the optimal educational environment for students. When we look at our students that are in grades 6 to 12, so it may not necessarily be everyday concurrent login teaching, and that's how kids get their instruction. It could be a situation where, perhaps the teacher has the students log in, but they have them working on an assignment while they're teaching the kids in person and vice versa. So I want to just make sure that we have a broad understanding of the possibilities of that. And that is why Mrs. Gould is going to the committees. We're going to really work through this, going to talk to teachers. We'll continue to, look at the research and the best practices to shape that. So it's not, I just want to provide just a little more nuance to what we mean when we talk about those structures. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that it is optimal. We have lots of classes in the high school where it's only one class offered. And so if we don't have an opportunity for kids to, jump on a Google Meet and observe the class or perhaps get an assignment, then they're doing, asynchronous, work in packets, for, something like that for the whole week, right? That's not optimal for kids. So we're trying to balance kind of like both of those things as we engage in the planning. So just wanted to add a little more detail. We've heard your feedback. We agree that we want to make sure that it's something that works. We know we need to get more information. We will continue planning, but also keep in mind, we know that there is value. In some instances, it's, middle school through high school, there are courses where it's difficult. We just don't have the ability to have a designated remote teacher, grade 6 to 12 for all the electives, in the district. So we know we have to have different models. Sorry, I know it's a long answer, but I just wanted to provide more.
And that's all fine. I appreciate your clarification. I definitely do understand the difference between elementary kids, younger kids, what they're capable of. These are age appropriate instructional methods for sure. And there's a dramatic difference. I just think that it's very, very important that in the communications, because reading this slide would lead one to believe that it was sort of simulcast, kid sitting at his dining room table doing what's happening at school. And that might work for some lessons, but not at all for others. And so we just need to be very, very clear that one, our professional teaching staff are going to be the people who determine what is appropriate for their instruction of their curriculum. And some days it may be this and some days it may be that, and that's totally fine. But it needs to be sort of a limber process that teachers can try things, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and they evolve without sort of a programmatic approach that this is how it will be done, sort of top down. It needs to be more organic from the classroom, even classroom to classroom. That's all. I appreciate the clarity.
Yep, I agree. And we'll ensure, as Mrs. Gould said, this is why she's meeting with all these teachers to do that piece. And you know what? Once we're able to start, whenever that timeline is, we know we'll be adjusting for sure. So we won't have things locked in. We're going to get feedback from teachers. We're going to get feedback from parents, right? We're going to get feedback from kids. So we know we'll continue to adjust accordingly. Sorry.
I wanted to address some of my concerns about the vaccination schedule. We know that both Moderna and Pfizer, at least according to what I've been able to find, reach their 95% efficacy rate 6 to 8 weeks after the first shot, so long as you get the second shot somewhere, at the right point in there. And the governor's timeline doesn't allow for that 6 to 8 weeks to elapse, even assuming they can, vaccinate everybody starting the week of February 1st, March 1 is too soon. I mean, it's not enough time to get everybody their first shot, let alone their second shot. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're being squeezed from, by Columbus with a timeline that's not realistic. And we need to do what's best for our community. So knowing the intentions of our staff is very important. Because the best way to protect everybody is to get 75% compliance from all of the adults and reach that 95% efficacy. And those are two separate things that need to work together. On the other hand, it is true that transmission amongst children is much, much lower than amongst adults. And the cases which we have seen in our population have, for the most part, been community spread, not during practice or in school. So it becomes important not to let our guard down. And so, what Mr. Lombardo was saying about masks is the most important thing. Is like everybody needs to wear the mask, and they need to continue wearing their mask, and they need to continue wearing their mask again and again, And yes, we have plexiglass dividers. Yes, we have 6-foot spacing. Yes, we have optimized our HVAC systems, but really we need to just wear our masks. I can't speak at all towards, the educational programs because I don't have Dan's experience and I wouldn't pretend to know what is best for all these different ages of students and all the different things that are taught. I just am certain that we need to maintain the choice for families, whether to come back into the buildings or not. And it looks like the numbers are fairly consistent, right? 35% want to stay remote at all the ages until high school. And then it looked like high school, it was 45% want to stay remote. So that tells me that high school students are, and it makes sense, better able to adapt to distance learning than younger students. And that, that seems intuitively correct. I have been hearing a fair amount from family members who really, really, really want their children to be back in person. And these are families for whom remote is not working. So those would be in your 65% of, respondents. And obviously they would like it to happen sooner rather than later, but we need to balance out the safety of the whole community in how we roll this out. And that's what has me worried, because I just don't see enough weeks in there between February 1 and March 1.
I will say that, doing this, I'm teaching in a 50-50 hybrid schedule right now. I think somebody else has their mic on. I'm getting feedback.
I can't turn mine off. My computer has frozen, so I'd have to shut you all off. I'm sorry.
So a couple of things that kind of loop back to what Jim was saying even earlier.
Felicia, your mic is on.
We have, it's all about building culture, I have kids in front of me every day and their masks slip down. They're, and it's just a matter of, you just build a little code that when I'm looking at you and I touch my nose, it means, hey, Malia, your mask slipped down, and that we're now so far into it, though, that culture is very well established. It wasn't like that at the beginning of the year. And establishing that culture universally, this is the absolute expectation all the time, was what we did well. And one of the things that's really important about that is that we had administrative support for that absolute expectation as well, so that if a kid was chronically, they just weren't doing it chronically, then they got an office referral, and they had an uncomfortable conversation with the administrator. And it was that sort of thing where the students were getting it, repeatedly. Yes, this isn't just in this teacher's room, it's building wide, it's in the halls, it's everywhere, and it's supported by all of the school environment. That's the thing that it takes a little while to create, but once you do, it kind of moves pretty smoothly. And I fear that, this is likely to be the situation in the fall as well. So everything that we do now is an investment toward a healthier start back in the fall also. And I wonder, Liz, if maybe what we're hearing here tonight is a call for, can we do some brainstorming about a plan that gets us open March 1st-ish, that is sort of a dip your toe in the water open. I'm just sort of trying to think creatively a way for us to live up to our promise to the state while being real cautious about numbers of people in the building.
Well, yeah, we do have a phase in also, so that's kind of we're pacing that out. I mean, we'll have some updated guidance. We'll have some new numbers this week, so I think that'll give us a better idea of how we can play around with that. So I don't necessarily have an answer for you as it relates to that, but I can say that we are anticipating phasing in, and I know I keep repeating, the Board of Health, but I would recommend we follow their guidance, and their guidance has been phased in. So, they'll start with small groups, and then they say hybrid, as the numbers go down, but they also take into account things like, vaccines, testing availability, like those types of things as well.
Kathan, do you have control to mute Malia's mic?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I don't.
Does anybody have that magic way of making that work?
I think you have to be the creator of the device.
I see Malia coming and going.
Okay, I'm back. Let me see if I can make it work. Nope.
Can you just completely disconnect?
I lost control of my microphone.
Can you just disconnect from that session and just dial back in?
I just tried rebooting my machine. I'll do it again.
While Molly is doing that, does anybody have any other questions? I mean, I've got a bunch. Okay, well then I'm going to get going. So I like the idea of pegging sort of some of the decision making that we're making with what the County Board of Health is saying. And then I would agree they're factoring in the Ohio, the national, and all the local information. And they're also factoring in our size. I mean, when we compare ourselves, Dan, to your district in Chardon, I mean, we are a big district in a very urban setting. And I think the decision for us to go back is probably there's different factors for us than there are on what you're going to find in Chardon. I'm also concerned about not agreeing to what the state is wanting us to do, which is basically committing to going back, but also accepting the fact that we're going to be vaccinated. And I think those two things go hand in hand. If we don't commit, then we don't get the vaccination, and we have no idea yet how all this, how this is going to play out. But I think when we say that we're going to commit to going back, we're only going to commit to go back if it's safe. And that is by looking at everything from the what the County Board of Health is saying with this, and I don't want to ignore the state, but if we're making a determination that the county hasn't even gotten their A1 vaccinations out the door, they haven't begun vaccinating in March, and they want us to go back in March, assuming that we're already vaccinated, we can't possibly do that. And on top of this, with the Board of Health saying, no, you can't go, you shouldn't be going back. So some of this stuff I think is just a little bit too early, but I am really, really afraid by not committing for the vaccine, we're doing a disservice to our staff and indirectly for our community. We want as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible. And we know staff is concerned about safety. We know parents are concerned about safety. When we look at these surveys, 50-50 or so want some type of return in the building. 50-some% want to stay, safe remote still. It just seems to me that, we really need to kind of, make sure that we're honoring, safety across all this. So I guess this question is for you, Liz. And, if you're not comfortable answering this, then I'd suggest we wait until we're ready to make a decision to actually go back. But, do you feel that we need to agree with the state so we're getting in line to get the vaccination and then see how it all plays out in the March timeframe?
I do think we should do that. I do think we should do that.
What about the other board members? What do you guys feel about that? Because I think that is sort of a real big piece of guidance that we need to give our staff.
Let me just say one more thing just to add to that. I also think that if come March 1st, if not earlier, if the Board of Health has not deemed it safe to return, I do not think we're going to have an issue with the state of not starting on March 1st, right? The governor himself has an advisory till the 23rd based on the rate of COVID spread, et cetera, other factors, right? If we get to, as we approach March 1st, and if we don't see our numbers improving, or if the board, and most importantly, the Board of Health has said, we just don't think it's safe. I don't think we'll be in trouble, right, for not, starting at that time. So that's just to add more to that.
Yeah, well, I think what I'll do is also, couch my statement. Of getting everybody's opinion here, but if the County Board of Health is telling us it's not safe, we're not going back until they say it is. So just sort of talking about this topic, what do you guys feel about that?
I feel pretty strongly that we need to at least get in line for the vaccine, because if we don't, who knows when our staff will be able to get the vaccine. I think we have to make some kind of commitment. And I say that knowing that if it's not safe, we don't go back. What are they going to do? They can't take the vaccines out of our arms after they've given them to us. Do we know whatever penalty there is if you don't open on March 1st? I guess I'd like to find out what that is. But I feel like it's too big of a risk for our community to say no and not get in line for the vaccine and not have some kind of commitment to March 1, particularly when we already are talking about a phased in return. We could phase that any way we want. And, I'm thinking about, most of our buildings, if you're only talking one grade, other than the high school, but one grade is a pretty small amount of children in any given building. if we were just starting, to phase in a grade at a time. And, I don't know what the phasing plan, we didn't go into details. Is it like that first phase and then the next week starts phase 2? Or is it that first phase and that first phase might be for a couple of weeks? I just think that, I think that we have to make some kind of commitment to at least get our staff in line for that vaccine. I mean, unless we find out that, none of our staff want to get the vaccine anyways. And in that case, that's a completely different issue that we need to resolve.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jody. Getting vaccinations for our teachers and staff seems to me like the first priority for everybody's safety.
I agree. I think, of course, we got our staff vaccinated, and with all the intents of, plan for success, right? So sure, we get everybody vaccinated who we can. We have the intention of opening up for March 1st. If it's not safe, we don't. Anytime the state of Ohio wants to have a conversation with me about living up to educational mandates, I'm happy to do it. We're going to begin with the roll. We'll be fine.
Any other comments about the vaccine and getting in line?
Yeah, Beverly, did you want to weigh in on that?
We have to consider, our staff who, if they're willing to get vaccinated, because I mean, we have some in our communities, people are leery about the vaccination. So, we'll have to wait and we'll have to see. I mean, we're hoping that, our staff and faculty, they get vaccinated, but if they choose not to, what can we do?
Yeah, so far we haven't heard anything about vaccines being required at this point, or any of that type of information. So, pending those type of requirements being shared, then a staff person, would, if they choose not to take the vaccine, just the same safety protocols and precautions that we have in place right now in terms of masks and social distancing, which, by the way, even for those who are vaccinated, we still would be implementing those same safety protocols.
And if you didn't take the vaccine, you would still be expected to return to work when we open.
I liked the idea of phasing in so that the first groups of students who return to the buildings are the ones who haven't been to the buildings before. I think that's a particularly good approach for keeping the numbers small and prioritizing the students who haven't been in a particular building before. I like that a lot.
I'd like to weigh in on the phasing in piece here too. I'd like to hear what everybody feels about prioritizing the phase in basically by sort of in this order, pre-K, kindergarten, 1 through 3, and then 4 and 5. I mean, we seem to see a trend where our youngest kids need to go back the quickest. So is there a way that we can make sure that we're honoring that in how we're prioritizing and going back?
Well, the Board of Health may, for example, indicate that it's appropriate to start bringing in small groups of students even before we actually start a hybrid model. So if that is something that appears in their guidance based on their assessment, we could start looking at small groups of students, pre-K, K, for example, to bring them, to start perhaps some work around literacy, for example. I'm just kind of sharing an example. I'm not saying that's exactly what it should be. It's just for example purposes. In terms of the, I think I would say pre-K, the way that it's scheduled, we have pre-K and K.
6 and then 9.
Yeah. So are you asking to change the order of the phasing I just want to make sure, are you
I'm not
asking?
going to change it. I mean, I'm just wondering, okay, I'm not an educator, okay? You know, you guys are the ones that are seeing this, day to day. You have access to, more data than we do as board members.
Yeah.
So, our role is largely check and balance. And,
Yeah.
in that regard, the data I'm seeing and sort of the anecdotal information that I've sort of consumed is our youngest children need to go back
Yeah.
sooner than our older kids.
Right.
I mean, that's a very, high level issue. I mean, there's a lot of nuances in that, but I mean, is that the case? And should we be looking at a structure that addresses that? And, maybe I'm the only board member that feels this way. And if I'm and you guys don't feel the same, I understand that.
Let me ask, I know that there have been committees that have been looking at the phase-in process. So I'm going to ask Felicia if you could just kind of give a little context to what the committees have been talking about that phase-in order, because they have been kind of discussing that.
So I think the phase-in order speaks to what Mr. Posh is requesting, because the first phase-in is the pre-K and K, 6 and 7, and then the next phase in is grades 1 through 5 altogether. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, I was just looking at, maybe I'm not reading the slides right. It looks like we're prioritizing pre-K and kindergarten, grade 6 and grade 9.
And when I shared that was to speak to those grades who have never been in our schools, to be there first, get acclimated and go through the protocols.
Okay.
And then the committee definitely said they did not want to phase in grade levels for elementary. And so that's why the next step is to phase in grades 1 through 5 altogether.
So I get it. So the committee was not interested in, for example, 1 through 3 and then a 4 and 5.
No, they wanted all of the elementary kids back as soon as possible.
Okay. Okay, well, that's important clarification. So then I'm going to move on and talk about the HEPE report and the ASHRAE. I don't know if you spell it out or it's phonetically sounded, but they're basically using, I guess, the CDC, April 14th guidance. And there's been talk in the community that, why didn't they use the newer guidance? And what I'm hearing tonight is there's not much difference between the two guidances. And if that's the case, can we have HEPE just certify the reports, but they already have the data, but can they certify it with the most recent guidance, the 10 through the October 10th, the October 7th guidance?
I think what we can do is we can ask them for an addendum to indicate that. So we can ask them for a supplement for their report.
Yeah, I think that's important. And this is why, we have, I trust when George says that he keeps the equipment well maintained. We've walked through the buildings, we see it, we understand that. And it's nice to hear the anecdotal things that HEPE has basically said that, they like our environment. And they also like the fact that our middle schools and our high schools have essentially all new air handling equipment. Whereas when you look at Shaker, that is back, they don't, and in a lot of the Shaker buildings, they don't even have the options to open windows where we do. But it seems to me, it's just a very, very, if the guidance is not that difference between the April and the October timeframe, it seems to me that it would be an easy addendum for them to throw on their report, and it would be a lot more meaningful and give it a lot more credibility. I'm also very interested in hearing on where we stand with the elementary schools, and if you do purchase the air purification, where does that get us? And I think we have to understand that it's not a perfect world. It just gives people and staff more comfort. They're more comfortable going back into the buildings, knowing that we're looking at this from all different angles. I, for one, am really not necessarily looking at the HEBE study as a decision point on whether we go back or not. I think we need to be looking more at the bigger, broader picture and go with something more like the County Board of Health that has more science and data behind them. And they're looking at a little bit bigger picture than just one report that's talking about our air handling.
I'll take care of it tomorrow, Liz.
Thanks, George.
Thanks. Athletics. Usually we talk a little bit about athletics and how that's going.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we have. I'll just share a quick update. We did start athletics back with some additional safety protocols. Paul can speak to some of the trends we've seen there, because there have been some independent bodies coming out to observe games, et cetera. So Paul, if you could share information there.
Sure. Just like we have been for the fall, our protocols are really that Joe has put in place, and the coaches and the students are following they're doing a really good job. We've had a couple reports, one for hockey that did come out, look at our protocols, a drop in on our procedures, and everything was passed for the hockey. We are doing a lot of things as far as for the winter is we're streaming a lot of games, which is really helping keeping people from close gathering. And we, knock on wood, we haven't gotten any reports recently with our kids playing the sports that they're playing. Joe continues to meet with the area directors and continue to talk with the OHSAA. So I feel we're in a really good spot, and things are going in a very good direction with our sports.
Are we streaming all of our major competitions?
Yes, we are streaming all of the major competitions. Yes, we are. Mm-hmm.
We've had a couple pieces of feedback about allowing more spectators in. Can you guys look at that and get back to me at a later date, or get back to the board and just sort of let us know where you guys stand with that?
Absolutely. I do want to say we are allowing 4 tickets for parent night. So we are definitely allowing, we don't want to take that opportunity away from parents and students, especially with seniors, to not be there for parent night. So we have approved 4 tickets for all the different parent nights, and we are looking to see what we can do about getting the day-to-day games in. Right now we're just going with the parent nights to make sure we get that together.
Okay. What about CTE and going back, and how that fits into some of these schedules? It seems to me that, that's a lot of that is hands-on. And, we know some of these kids are back. Well, I don't want to say now, but I mean, there's a high priority to get those kids back, and have been, before we were recently shut down again. How does that fit in? Or it just fits?
That's an example of, I spoke about the guidance of the CDC. They have, in the past, when we were even at level 3 or red, they have advised schools that it's safe to bring in small groups of students. And so that's one example of, if we get that guidance from the CDC, from the Board of Health, then we would start to implement those small group instructional models. Again, that includes CTE. so yeah, so we're just again waiting until it's safe, and then we want to get those going as well.
Okay, can you, unless there's any other questions, I'd like kind of a quick summary of, okay, so where we're going from here. It certainly doesn't sound like we're doing anything until February 1st. Is that correct?
Yes, we'll stay at our same model. And that's just me kind of, assuming that, we'll still be high this week. So we'll keep the same remote models in place through February 1st. We will have more information. And then as that information is shared, I will share that, with board members, share that, with all of our stakeholders, and share the recommendations that, we have based on, upcoming, based on updated guidance and what the data trends are looking like.
I do have one additional question, because you just mentioned February 1st, but the PSAT is before that. What safety measures or safety protocols are being taken for the PSAT test and any of the in-person testing that we're going to have to do?
Yeah, we have, and we actually, to the point you're making, Jody, we did have students in the fall for testing as well. So Felicia or Paul, if you want to speak to the safety protocols we had in place, then it'll be similar protocols in place for the PSAT too. It's at the high school, we'll have a lot of space to spread out, but I'll let them kind of speak to that more specifically.
The counselors have shared guidance in regards to the protocols. Ms. Serini, as they did with the prior testing, they did small groups. They had them spread out in different classrooms. They were 6 feet apart. They had to wear masks. So they followed all of the safety protocols that we had in place. And they'll do the same for any of the other testing that we do as well. So the council
will have their temperature taken when they come in the building, and they have the desk shields up on all the desks.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I have one little quick comment, Jim? Paul, I don't know. It may be that for most of the parent nights with sports, it's the last home game. But if it's not, I think it would be a really good gesture to allow senior parents to attend the students' last home game, the senior students' last home game. For many of these parents, it'll be the last time that their child competes in that sport. And many of these kids, as we all know, have been doing that sport, whatever it is, since they were tiny. So I really do think that the last game senior year is a special experience. And, for outdoor sports, it's usually not as challenging for parents, at least parents, to attend. Indoor sports, though, which is the seasons that we're in for the most part now, it does really come into play. So I just hope that that'll go into the planning.
Make a good point, Dan. Thank you.
So I'm just sort of, thinking through logistics here, and we're already in the middle of January. Our next board meeting is February 2nd. These meetings where we're talking about reopening usually last an hour and a half to 2 hours. Will we have another meeting before a decision is made about going back if there's some kind of
update? Yeah, we should.
I cannot imagine that the County Board of Health is going to okay going back February 1st. But I don't know.
But we don't know, right? I think to your point, Jim, and we did this in the fall, we should just prepare to have additional meetings added to the calendar so we have time to discuss this and get more information. One question that I heard board members discuss that you would like the answer to is the number of staff that indicated that they're interested in the vaccine. And so again, I think I'll be able to get that information this week. I do want to So that's, that's just some additional information that I can provide to board members as well. But we'll also have updated numbers from the county, and I anticipate some guidance coming out early next week, if not late this week, to updated guidance.
Well, go ahead, Dan.
Can we get the statistics about teachers broken down by grade levels also?
They did not take, because of, the ESC is not collecting, personal information.
We're not doing the survey, right? Thank you. Okay, right. Sorry.
I also want to be careful and sort of, we don't want to blindside our parents. And if the, hypothetically, let's say the county says it's safe, you can go back, February 3rd. Well, we find this out February 3rd. When are we pulling the trigger? How are we making the decision as a board? What kind of notice are we giving our staff and our parents? And how would this phase-in process work at that point? I think there's, I've got a lot of I'm just uncertain about all this, and I need some help better understanding how we're going to make that happen.
Yeah, and I get it. It's difficult to not have that information. So one reason I kind of have February 1st as a benchmark, because people know that at least up until that time, we will remain in the current structures. Now, I anticipate as we get more information, we will probably have some additional meetings to discuss, okay, so here's where we are now, and here's what we're hearing about, information from the Board of Health. When do we really think this phase-in will happen? But I do want, parents and staff to be prepared. Should we be able somehow to come back to know, just want people to be prepared. We know you got to get prepared in terms of your family, right? In terms of childcare and all that. So February 1st right now is that guidepost we're giving you in terms of, we know that we will start remote. But if the board decides right tonight that this is the case, from February 1st through March 1st, there may be a possibility that we start to bring, some of the students, staff and students back. So that's kind of, we want to give people at least that level of awareness for planning purposes. And as things adjust, we will share that information. Because if you remember, before the break, the date that we gave was January, I think 19th for staff, maybe 25th for students. But then, the numbers didn't really get much better. We didn't get updated guidance. So we're just pushing it out a little more. But again, those are kind of like our readiness dates. So I would say to a family, you kind of want to start to get ready. Of course, we'll have some time before we transition, but I don't want people to be blindsided, which is why I wanted to give that February 1st date. So people know we will remain as we are at least until then. And as soon as we get more information, we will share that information out.
So I really like the term readiness as opposed to going back, because I think families do get really concerned about, we're going to go back on February 1st. But I will tell you right now, I don't feel comfortable, being okay with that unless we have more information from the county. And frankly, we have more information about the vaccines too. All this stuff is playing out. We're making some assumptions that, we're going to have staff that's going to get some vaccinations starting February 1st. That's what we're hearing from the state. But we also heard our elected officials saying that we were going to get 20 million Americans vaccinated by the end of the year. And what it was, 10 or 20% of that number actually happened. So, I think I like the idea of our community understanding that we're ready to implement a plan on this date, but we haven't pulled the trigger because we just don't have all the data yet. What do you guys, what do the other board members feel about that?
I shared the same concerns, Jim. I think readiness is the word, but realistic and cautionary also. And you know, Liz, it also occurred to me that, you know, I'm sure you've already done this, just knowing you, but please let the county know that if we can be a partner in any way in their rollout of these vaccines, in terms of the use of our facilities while we're closed, anything that we can do to be a positive agent for change in the larger community, we're all about that. So please roll out the red carpet for them in any way that we can to be good agents of change.
Yes, Dan, I did have Nancy Pepler reach out to Metro Health just to indicate that we are willing to partner with them on this. They're waiting for more information like everyone else. But, you know, we have Wiley available and ready. You know, we also have the high school. So as soon as we're ready to go, as soon as we get the information.
So my feeling is that I agree. And I also think that, you know, we need more information. I'm fine making the decision tonight that we're, you know, not going back to at least after February 1st. I think it's more readiness. And I think that we can all plan that there will probably be another meeting, maybe two, between now and when our regularly scheduled meeting would be, because it's just like how things were over the summer and over the fall. I mean, we still haven't seen the full impact yet of whether or not there's going to be a holiday spike. And we're waiting to see what that data is. So I think that, Jim, to answer your question, I think, you know, as board president, you know, you can call meetings. Feel free to call one if you need to. If Liz has more information and we need to call another board meeting, we call another board meeting and we get updated. And, you know, I personally, this is just my belief right now. I probably don't see us going back until at least March 1st. You know, I would love to be surprised on that. I would love to wake up in a week and the county's at orange. But I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing you did, Jody, which is that we haven't seen what's going to happen because of Christmas and New Year travel and parties and family get-togethers. There's no question that that's going to start showing itself in the statistics really soon.
Right, right. But once again, we have to be ready because, you know, if like I said, by some miracle, the numbers go down and we could go back, then we need to be ready to do it.
One final thing, I really feel it's, and I've kind of talked with people. I've made my ideas sort of clear about this, but the minute our doors are open, this board needs to be meeting face to face.
I would say even before that.
I'm up for tomorrow.
Beverly, you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, have all the board members been tested and vaccinated?
I wish.
I have been tested once. I had a COVID scare. Thankfully, it came up negative. I have not been vaccinated yet. I look forward to it.
Yeah, I've had 3 tests, but I'm not yet I don't qualify for a vaccine yet. The rest of my household is getting the jabs because of where they work, but I don't get it yet.
Yeah, well, I would like to, at least for us to be tested before we reconvene meeting in person. And I also think that, we just have to wait until we get the release. So I agree with Liz and with Jody. We're at a wait and see. So we'll just have to wait and see and be prepared when that time comes.
Okay, well, I think this pretty much wraps everything up then. So just recapping one last thing, Molly and I do meet with Liz, and we'll be meeting with her on Friday. Sometimes they're every Friday, sometimes they're every other Fridays, but as sort of events unfold, we'll either convene a meeting or let you guys know exactly what's going on. If there's nothing else to discuss, well, first of all, I want to make sure we're thanking staff. This was a very detailed presentation. I know it takes a lot of time to put these things together. Thank you very much for all your time and work putting together a real thorough presentation for us. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
Scott, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Posh.
Yes.
Mr. Heiss,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes. And I also want to thank staff for addressing so many of the concerns which were brought up from the community, because I think it's important that we keep abreast of all of those questions coming at us. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.